So welcome to Parashat Tzav and Vayikra. We are doing combined interview today with one of my original teachers in Tsfat, Rabbi Shaya Gutman, who is not only a great teacher but a remarkable musician, a violinist and composer. So and I've had the benefit of hearing much of your music and enjoyed it tremendously.
Sure.
So multi-talented, and it's a real pleasure to have you on the deep dive. Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing. I've sort of lost touch with you for a few years, ever since we were learning together.
So I think when we started, I was doing that program in Makarev.
Yes.
And that it was pretty intense. I was teaching, at that time, I was teaching like 8 different classes every week.
Oof.
And there was, we're doing 2 days in Makarev, and then I also have the 2 days in
Kosovo, yeah. And you were teaching creativity, right? It was quite an interesting idea, creativity in Torah or something.
Right, well that's been a big issue for me because I've had to try to figure it out, in my own terms. But throughout the COVID, we always did the shiurim in Kosovo. That kept going all the time. It's still going.
Yeah.
We were learning the Maharal's Be'er HaGoyla. We finally finished that. So I chose something that so far went well. It's called Amud HaAvoida from Borach Kosovo, which is also appropriate for Kosovo. He was a contemporary of the Baal Shem Tov and the Magen Avram. He wasn't. I don't know if you could call him really a Talmud. He didn't have a following of Hasidim specifically, but he's dealing with the Sefer with the essence of what is ruchnius, what is spirituality altogether, and how we can describe it in terms of Meshulam, various parables and things, but not to get hung up on the physicality of the parable itself, of the metaphor itself. So he has a whole sefer explaining that. It's really very fascinating.
Tell us a few words about creativity and music. What have you discovered? Because music is so key to the Jewish neshama.
Yeah, really. I would say of all the creative facets, probably music is the most. And that goes back to the Bais Mikdash also. I mean, it goes even further back than that. David HaMelech and it's talked about in Bereshis already, in Yuval. There's been a tremendous emphasis on music. I think one of the advantages of music is it's really a spiritual thing because there's no physicality to it. It's not a tangible thing, and it's also the language of the heart. So it lends itself to expressing the midas. So because of that, it seems also to lend itself to linking with Kabbalah, because Kabbalah is based on the midas, and Hasidus particularly, and starting with Ramak from Talmud Dvorah, we bring down the spheres in terms of their emotional correlation. So each midah has a specific, each of the spheres has a particular emotion or midah that is associated with. So therefore, my approach has been now for a few years trying to get a system together whereby you can take a given text, say something out of Tehillim or whatever, and analyze that, in terms of the Kabbalistic meaning of it, which refers to the midas and how they relate to each other, because as we know, from Kabbalah, it's not just identifying like this word is this sphere and stuff like that. It's a question of how they interact and the processes that are going on over time. And since music is time oriented, it's talking about movement, and that's everything. I mean, davening is about movement. Everything is about the movement of the spheres and how they interact with and integrate with each other. So if that can be expressed musically, not only does it have a truth to it in terms of the Kabbalistic underpinning, but also in terms of the emotional, the feelings and how they interact with each other.
Do you think it's as important for a Jew to take up an instrument as a way of connecting with God as it is to pray? I mean, is it that important?
I wouldn't, there's certainly different people find their own, particular individual expression through different times. I don't think you can legislate that a person should take up. There's certainly been emphasis in Yiddishkeit, I mean, among Yidden anyway, to take up instruments. There's a story that when Stalin, in the Stalinist period, they sent these expeditions to go out to the Shtetlach, to the small towns, to get to document this folk culture of those towns. So one of the things they were studying with Jews, because Jews was considered also a folk culture. So they say that when they would go to any like an apartment building or whatever, you could tell how many people lived there by how many violins were on the wall.
Wow.
That it was so common, and you see pictures of kids, playing violins in the streets and stuff like that. It was extremely, widespread. And because of that, when the Jews came over to the United States, for example, or even to Western Europe, but when the Jews migrated from Eastern Europe, the top musicians, certainly classical, and many of the even the popular were Jewish, because they got that from the home. There was not that much that they could do. They weren't trained necessarily, and they weren't allowed to do a lot of things. So this was where they found expression. So you have all the top episode. Even violinists. I mean, if you would count in the 50 years ago, probably 15 out of 20 of the top violinists in the world were Jewish.
Amazing, amazing.
Unfortunately, they didn't keep the Yiddishkeit, but in most cases.
So let's dive into the Parashat of Vayikra and Tzav. I mean, we're talking about korbanot, sacrifices. Although the definition of sacrifices is terrible. It's an offering. It's an offering to Hashem. How do we relate to that today? I mean, we haven't had it for 2,000 years or so. And yet so much of the Torah is dedicated to the details, the fine details of korbanot. And we're told that the Torah is the blueprint of the world. So how come that so much of the Torah is a blueprint to something that doesn't relate to us for the last 2,000 years?
Okay, so good question. The way and there's many different ways of dealing with that question, because there's so many different ways. Maybe we have, Pshat, Remez, Drosh, and Soy, the different ways of looking at the Torah. So you can learn it out in different ways. But the way in this year anyway, the way I've kind of taken the particular angle, that you have to understand what, and unfortunately it's kind of a long answer. It's not too long.
You've only got 4 minutes, Rabbi.
I told the history of the world in 15 minutes.
There you
go. Basically, Hashem wants a place to dwell in the Gashmias physical world.
Right.
Okay? So the whole thing was working up to the building of the Mishkan. That was like the climax of the whole. I mean, other than going into Eretz Yisrael, but the Mishkan was necessary in order to go into Eretz Yisrael and eventually build the Beis Hamikdash.
You mean the whole build-up of the Torah is to get to the place where we've created a Mishkan for Hashem.
Right. Because Hashem wants a dwelling place. He wants a physical place where there's physical stuff going on.
Right.
So all of that was building to the building of the Mishkan, and then finally of course, they got delayed in the Midbar for 40 years, but then they finally got into Eretz Yisrael, and then there was a whole few hundred years until they finally built a physical Beis Hamikdash, standing Beis Hamikdash, which was also like, big push to finally do that. And then, one Beis Hamikdash, the second Beis Hamikdash. So the point is, Hashem wanted that to be the center from which the light of the Shekhinah, there would be a presence of the Shekhinah, which is the divine presence in the physical world. From there, that light would go out to the entire world, and it was a place that the Goyim would also come to give korban nedova. They were also allowed to give certain korbanos, and it was recognized as being a place where you could go there and see Hashem, and you could also be, you could get a kapora. They said that nobody went to sleep in Yerushalayim without with any sins on their head, because it was all wiped out by the korban tomid, every day, every night. So this was the whole function of the world, was around the Beis Hamikdash. So now that Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, you have to go into Golas. Basically, what it means is v'shchanti b'soichan. It means that the Hashem is within each person. So each person, each person becomes a light, and the kehillas, the Batei Midrushim are connected to the Beis Hamikdash. And all of this is to have a presence. So Hashem now has His presence spread out, in all throughout the world through the presence of Jews there. But the ideal is to have one place with that it should be Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim and the Har Bayis and the Beis Hamikdash and the Kodesh Kodeshim and then the Aron Kodesh and it's all going down to where Hashem is allowed to come into the world. So in one sense, it's for us to look at that as being the model. The other thing is to understand, how do we serve Hashem? So the idea of the Beis Hamikdash is and the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash is that this is a microcosm of the entire cosmos on all levels, because it brings together everything. It brings together the four Yesoidis of Eish, Mayim, Riach, Ofar. It brings together the Kohanim, the Israelim, and the Leviim. Donim Smeach Chaim Medaber. All of these things are present in the Beis Hamikdash,
right.
And through their kabbalas we understand how, again, the interrelationship between those things and what we do with them. Because the whole thing is everything represents something. Everything in the, you got the animals that represent the chai, and you've got the zipoidim, and you've got the water, and you've got all of these things that are in the eish. Idea we bring the eish min ha'hedjid, but the eish comes from the shemayim. All these things are representative of how we serve Hashem in the world and with the world. And that's our job. Is we are supposed to be bringing Hashem into the world by using gashmistic things, using out the ruchnius, the spiritual potential of everything in the world, and the interaction between those things. And we're the ones who are really responsible for making things happen.
The Alshech says something very interesting, that is, even at the time of the Mishkan, the idea was that V'shachanti b'tochem, Hashem used or dwelled in the hearts of the Jewish people, even then.
Sure.
And then it sort of reflected into the Mishkan, and that's where the light came out. But my question is, if from the beginning he was dwelling in our hearts, why do we need the Mishkan? Let him dwell in our hearts, and that we are the Mishkan. Why do we need an external Mishkan to complement that?
Why? I don't know if we can ask why. Why does Hashem want to have that physical presence? Why does Hashem want? Why is Eretz Yisrael special? Why is it important that Yidden Dafka in Eretz Yisrael? Why can't we just stay in the Gullus, spread out throughout the world? Why do we have our own place? Why do we have to have? Why is Yerushalayim special? Why is the Har Bayis special? Why did Hashem was talking to Avram Avinu and Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov and their experiences and how they related to those special places? Because Hashem has this idea apparently of centralizing things, like a focus. Like this is the center point. Then everything spreads out from there. The idea of Evan HaShasiyah, the whole world was created from the Evan HaShasiyah. Everything is coming out from that one point. And the ideal thing is for there to be that kind of a centralization and a focus, I think.
Yeah. So let's go to the Korban issue. I mean, it's very difficult for a 21st century man to, using his intellect and experience, to understand the essence of a Korban. You're taking this animal, this pure, innocent animal, typically less than a year old, right? And you're offering it. I mean, the whole thing is just so contrary to our understanding of the world today, especially with all the human rights and animal rights and all of that. How do we understand Korban today, for the thinking man today?
I think that the thinking man has to understand that the thinking of today is way off. It's a total contradiction to everything that we have always believed and everything's always known. It is this scientific orientation towards the world and not understanding that everything is a remez. Everything that we have in the world is a physical representation of things that are going on in higher worlds. And this whole idea that like eating meat is somehow destructive, like it's doing a disservice to the animal by taking. It's like, why does the animal exist? Why does anything in the world exist, including ourselves? It's in order to serve Hashem with it and to elevate that physical thing to a higher level. The opportunity of an animal to become a korban is like the best thing that could ever happen to that animal. It's like they're all chalishing to halavai. It's like you're taking something from an animal level and raising it up to such a high level, spiritual level, to be offered as the people are supposed to feel. We're supposed to feel like we would like to be offered up to Hashem. We're sacrificing our lives to Hashem. And we've done it in all the generations, and that's a very, very high thing.
So take us through the psychology at the time. If their thinking is correct at the Mishkan and giving the Korban, take us through the psychology of the person offering the Korban and what he's supposed to feel and how that's supposed to be conducive to serving Hashem.
Okay, so first of all, one of the major, if not the major, kavanah of the person committing. First of all, you have to send a tremendous amount of the function of the Beis Hamikdash was, number one, in terms of clearing out. This is the idea of a kapora, that if a person does something wrong, so this is a way that he can be cleared out, and everything can be reset back to where it's supposed to be. So therefore, from that context, he's looking himself that he is really the korban, and this is a proxy for him. Mm-hmm. So everything that happens to the animal is really supposed to happen to him. It's like when we bring kaporas on Erev Yom Kippur. It's like we are really. It's really supposed to be us. So that's a part of the tshuva process. And they say the music, the purpose of the music in the Beis Hamikdash was largely to affect the emotional state of the person to bring him closer to doing tshuva.
Well, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. So this is all. That's the experience as he's going and he's offering this korban instead of himself. Okay, that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that this is a way of showing his appreciation to Hashem, for different things like when we talk about Korban Toida, different things that thanking Hashem for various things, celebrating, Hashem. There's the idea of the Bikurim, he's bringing in the first fruits and whatever, he's taking his best. He wants to take his best. There's the whole thing with Cain and Hevel, because they didn't bring the Cain didn't bring his best. The idea is I want to bring my best and offer it to Hashem because I know Hashem is the one who gave it to me. Everything I have is
even though he doesn't need it. Hashem doesn't need it.
Right. So that's a very interesting thing. I saw something in Me'am Loyas. He brings down something from about this is not from he doesn't bring it from the Kuzari, but it was talking about a Kuzari king. It was asking how is it lechem ishel Hashem? What does Hashem have to do with bread? It's a physical thing. He doesn't eat. So he brings a whole mashal there. He says the fact that a person has a neshama and a guf, a soul and a body, and the soul is totally spiritual and the body is physical. How can those two things exist together in the same entity? He says that the Greek philosophers tried to figure it out and they couldn't figure it out. Right? So he says, so even though we don't know how it can be that way, but it is that's life. That's what life is made up of. So it's an unanswerable question. It's like it's a contradiction. It's a paradox. So he says just like if you see that a certain refuah, certain medicine or something, works, and it really works, but you don't know how it works. You don't know the mechanism. You don't throw it out because you don't know how it works. You appreciate it. You use it because the same thing. So the fact that Hashem is totally beyond the physical world and He dwells in a physical place. It's mamish the same thing as a neshama and a guf. It's the body and the soul. It's the same kind of paradox that they can exist together in the same place, so what it means is, to me anyway, is that the physical Beis Hamikdash is like a living thing. It's a living, pulsing. It has a heartbeat. There's a chayas going on there. It's being a microcosm of the whole world, and that the light of Hashem is just as the light of Hashem, or Ein Sof is that which enlivens the entire world. So this Shechina is enlivening this physical place to become a ruchnius place, a place that embodies spirituality. It's the center and the source of spirituality. So the fact that physical and spiritual coexist is simply because that's what creation is about.
It's interesting. Maybe that's why the commandment is that we should always have the fire burning there. In the same way that a body needs to have heat, otherwise it doesn't survive. Maybe that's
everything. Every single detail of the Beis Hamikdash and everything that goes on there can all be related to what's going on in life.
So I noticed in this parasha, we read 7 times, I think, Reach Nechuach LaHashem. What does it mean for Hashem to have an enjoyment from the smell of the korban?
Okay, so this again, it's all metaphorical.
Right.
It's all right. So first of all, we know that Hashem has what we call nachas from the Brias. When Hashem tells us to do something, and we do what He told us to do, the way He told us to do it, He has tremendous nachas from that. Just like a parent, when he sees his child is going in the ways that He taught him to go, and which he knows is for his best interest. He only taught it to him for his own best interest. But when he sees that, he has tremendous nachas. So the metaphor for nachas is when you smell something. Obviously, the idea of smell is the most spiritual of all the senses. It's the most intangible of all the senses. So
more than music of the ear?
Yeah, apparently so. It's actually the one sense that was not involved in the Chet of Odom Rishon. So therefore, it's considered to be a more spiritual sense than all the other ones. So it's the way that Hashem created the world for the sake of tainuk. There's an idea of
Enjoyment.
Enjoyment. And a friend that I work with on a particular project, I'm working with him now, his big thing is that the concept of that Hashem wants to share the joy of being. That's this whole theme. Hashem is enjoying and that's the idea of Shabbos, which is really just the enjoyment of Maaseh Bereshis, just being. So in that sense, the fact of Reach Nechoich and why it's so much emphasized is that Hashem is not saying that this is just for you and it's not for me. But what am I getting out of it? It's the nachas. What is Hashem? He's not getting a gashmistic thing from this. The whole thing is that he should be able to smell that reach, and he should feel good about the world, and the world and the world should know that he feels good about them. It's what does it say? Like that. The fact that we know that Hashem takes pleasure from us brings us so much more pleasure because we know that's our relationship with Him.
Do you think when the third Beit HaMikdash is going to be built that we're going to have korbanot again?
For sure.
At
least for a certain period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, see, the thing is, first of all, you have to have korbanos for that initial purification that's got to happen.
Right.
Right. Everybody's got to be cleared out of all that stuff. That's definitely got to happen. There's going to be a lot of korban chatas going on, at the beginning. But then after that, if we don't have a Yetzer Hara, so we're not going to be doing things, wrong. So then hopefully there won't be an Israel.
So tell us now, what is the substitute today? We don't have the korbanot, we don't have the clearing, we don't have the kaparot. So what is the substitute for korbans today?
Tefillah. Tefillah is based on the korbanos.
Mm-hmm.
So not only do we say the kavanahs, which is also, if you learn something and you say it, it's as if you did it. If you have the kavanah, is as if you're doing it. And we say we say all the time hirutzim, that it should be accepted as if we actually were doing the korban.
Right.
So that's a big thing. And then you've got the Shachas bin Chamara, this connected the kavanahs. So it's a direct relationship. We call it musaf. You have things like all these kavanahs the tefillahs that we have dafka because of the korbanos, and they talk about the korbanos. So
why is it important to read the korbanot in the actual script when you
about the Pitum
it?
Ktoros?
Yeah,
I don't know. It's a little bit controversial actually. Those that say you should not because it's not Torah Shabbat Peh, and there's only the first paragraph is from the Torah Shabbat. So the rest of the Torah Shabbat Peh, and there's a question if you should write the Torah Shabbat. Somebody disputes that you shouldn't write the Torah Shabbat Peh in Ksav. But I don't really know. I haven't seen it written down. I think it was from the Seder Hayoim. I think was the sefer that talked about the Segula. Mm-hmm. I have it myself. Somebody gave it to me.
Me too.
But I don't know exactly why.
And normally Tzav falls in with Pesach rather. Is there a link between Tzav and Pesach? Do you think?
Actually, I just heard a nice word. It was talking about the korban toida, which is talking about in this parsha.
Yeah.
So it says that the korban toida really, this is from the Chassam Sofer, so I didn't see it inside. I heard from somebody else that the korban Pesach actually was an inyan of a korban toida.
Ah.
It's kind of in advance because they brought it even before they went out, but it was an inyan of a korban toida. But there's no chumetz. The korban toida has a chumetz. So there was.
That's right.
So
one of the four is a chometz.
Right. So there's korban toida specifically is chometz.
Yeah.
So he says that we have to bring the whole Sfiras Oimer is like a continuation of the korban toida until you get to Shavuos and you bring She'alechem and that's chometz.
Beautiful.
So that's like a culmination of the.
That's so nice.
That's a nice idea.
That's beautiful. Let's talk about the Korban Todah because it's something that really I want to explore. This idea that there are four reasons for bringing Korban Todah. One, if you're recovering from serious illness. Another, if you came out of prison. Another, if you traveled the desert or came out of the sea. But the being recovered from a sickness is the odd one out because all the other ones are related to a healthy person, and recovering from sickness is
prison is also pretty much a type of thing.
But
they're all involving some level of danger.
Yeah, but what was interesting is that you've got these 40 loaves of bread that you have to bring. 30 of them are matzah based, and one is chametz based, as you said. And you have a limited time to eat it. And so the only way you can eat them all in that limited time is to bring a lot of people and to advertise your gratefulness to Hashem for saving you. I found that fascinating, that this idea of, it's not a private affair. This is a communal, public declaration of thanks to God.
So we call it a Sudas Ador. So that's the idea of a Sudas Ador. That you are dafka supposed to show your gratitude to Hashem publicly.
Yeah, very good. So as we're coming up to the end of the time, but give us, if you can, a takeaway that we can take from these two parashot that we can bring to enhance our lives today. What would that be in your opinion?
Well, for one hand, it's very simply that that the more we get into the specifics and the details of the service in the Beis Hamikdash, first of all, we understand how important the details are. It has to be done right, so to speak, conscientiously, and it's not just however we feel like doing it, but there's really a very specific structure of how Hashem wants to be served. And that's what he's getting the nitpick when you do it right, because if you don't, it's usually puzzle, and then it doesn't count for anything. And the other thing is to understand that just as the Beis Hamikdash was intended to be a light for the world, so if now without the Beis Hamikdash, that responsibility is on us and our kehillas. Right. That we're not just as individuals, but we have to gather together, just like they did there. We have to gather together in congregations, in the Beis Hamikdash, which is the Beis Hamikdash, Beis Knesset, which is the kind of the replacement, in this world. So the idea of being bitzibur, together as a kehillah, is a very, very important concept, and then also as being individuals. So that we are supposed to be radiating the light of the Shekhinah for the world, and that's.
So I want to thank you very much for being my guest.
Thank you for having me.
And really enjoyed it, and I give you a blessing that you continue teaching. I know we learned the Kohelet together, and it was great fun. Yeah. You continue teaching, and that you continue composing and playing and sharing the light of your music with the world as well. B'ezrat Hashem. Thank you so much. Be blessed. Thank you.